was that he was signaling there, remember, I'm on the same page with you. I'm on the same level with you. And this is what the deep state, there have been a lot of presidents, Nixon, Bush, Carter, whatever it has been over the years, that people have liked or not liked. But the media and the reaction to Trump when he got in was, you had to peel them off the ceiling. It was an absurd overreaction by anybody's. It was like get him out by any means necessary, Russian collusion, whatever it happened to be. But Trump, in that first term, what he tried to do was pull the UFO file back under executive control. And the way that he would do that was adopting the Space Force. They could not get around him on that. Now, one of the weird things that happened with Space Force was that Chance Salzman is the general they got to lead it. And if you look at his background, he was there at Malmstrom Air Force Base for over a decade. And Malmstrom was the site of a massive UFO flyover of a nuclear base, which shut down our nuclear missiles in Montana. So there's always that link and the chain and the footprints back to the UFO file.
Sure, you're great all the factoids, but bottom line, you don't like to put God on the fence here on a limb, but what do you think's about to happen? Why is this moving so fast?
This is the opening up of this process, but it's one group is going to get the initiative on it or the other group. Remember back in
explain the group. We have X-Protect and then we have Explain.
Yes, exactly. X-Protect is the group that has protected the secrecy over this whole period of time, and their rules are no chief executive can get their hands on it. That is since the middle of the Eisenhower era, and they got rid of some presidents.
Industrial complex run by technocrats, a technological elite taking control of the government. Was he warning of X-Protect or was he with X-Protect?
Which one?
Was when Eisenhower warned of technocrats controlling the government secretly, was he warning of X-Protect or was he with them?
No, there's no question that he was more on the ex-Cher side, and he was disturbed because he had been through World War II, and he had led the Allies to victory, and he had also assumed the presidency and realized...
He wasn't just a great soldier, he was an excellent bureaucrat, and he saw what they were doing.
Yes, there's no question about it. He also shared with Kennedy that the UFO file was where the CIA was pulling away. Matter of fact, there's a famous incident in Eisenhower's presidency where they stopped giving him briefings on Area 51 back then. And Eisenhower says straight up, well, you know what? If you don't do it, at a certain point, I'm going to send the 8th Army in there. So you decide how you want this to go. And this is very interesting because he started getting briefings right away. What happened, though, is he had a heart attack in the middle of his administration, and Nixon took over for a short period of time. That is when the UFO file got moved out into this whole different specter, which is now right in the middle between that corporate influence and that intelligence aerospace influence. And what's overlooked often whenever we are hearing things about the deep state or whenever we get into these different kind of geopolitical messes is the aerospace side is always missing, but they're huge. They have the control because you can control things on the ground from above. That's the dream of the ultimate control from space. That goes all the way back. AI-controlled
space, drone-controlled ground. So again, quantify that. I'm going to give you the floor. You got a big exhibit you sent us. What is this moment in history? Why is it happening now?
It's huge. Look, every president has stared at the abyss of UFO disclosure and denied it because they realized the stakes were too high. The X-Protect group has been in charge, as I said, since the middle of the 1950s on that. There was a battle there very early on about what was going to come out. Forrestal and people like that were included. The dynasty of that is the JFK era because he saw how they unceremoniously dumped his friend, his best friend, Forrestal out of a window, and he was the Secretary of Defense at the time. And famously, during one of his last speeches, he went to the actual grave site of Forrestal and made sure to take pictures there. So Kennedy understood what he was up against. It's quite interesting. There's a character out there running these think tanks, who was part of these think tanks at a certain point. Now she's giving commentary. Her name is Pippa Malmgren. Her dad was someone who was a staffer, a national security staffer in the Kennedy administration. Before he died, and I was communicating with him on X, he said clearly that he thought that the main reason that Kennedy was assassinated was over the UFO file and his willingness to share it with the Russians. Now, this is an old piece because remember, whenever these presidents get together with their counterparts in Russia, they try to keep them apart. And Trump asked, I don't want any State Department people, I don't want any CIA people in there when I'm negotiating over the UFO file. This is what makes them, hit the roof and say, oh, he was a traitor with Putin and all the rest of it. It's to keep those two forces together, because the UFO file belongs under the executive branch. Right now, it's in the hands of the X-Protect Group, which is intelligence, CIA, NGA, NRO. They control it. They're the ones who have it, and they certainly don't want to give it up for some Trump initiative. And so the idea was the Democrats were trying to make a deal with them. The Republicans, through Trump, his side was trying to make a deal with them. And so Trump has the ability to go around them by doing his own announcement. That's the crucial step that he's taking, and it's historic because even his enemies will have to realize the potency of that kind of a move. And frankly, it represents a kind of maximum peril. I'll be honest with you about that. Clearly, there was a scientist who was assassinated just this morning.
Well, we start over. Let's do a little exactly that was involved in all this. And studying foreign asteroids and things that are dangerous to Earth. Explain to people, you're saying maximum danger for Trump right now. He's going at the heart of the deep state. Say it in your own words.
There's no question about it. This is because when you go at that particular secret, the X-Protect Group is, they're lethal, and they work directly with the Central Intelligence Agency, the highest now assassination group in the world. Very often we'll hear about, some state actor came over here and assassinated this main figure. You can't do anything in terms of assassination in the United States without the Central Intelligence Agency. There's no way. And the CIA are masters at it. A lot of people have tried to say, the CIA is reformed. And, they've given up this whole practice since that era. Not at all. They've never been truly sanctioned in any way. We recently have the records come out that they were trying to assassinate.
So in your own words, I'm going to put clips out of this. You're saying this is Trump's most dangerous move is right now. You're saying the UFO file is the most dangerous thing.
UFO file represents the maximum peril when it comes to President Trump and his initiative around releasing the files. It's not, Hegseth was putting a little gray alien head at his Twitter feed. Look, I don't know if that guy has a clue or not, but this is a very serious, major issue, and he must know it on some level, that whole system, and if they try to negotiate with the system and say, well, we want to let a certain amount of this out, that system is sitting there in the background, and they have developed now for 8 decades an entirely different setup of breakaway technology. Now, how do you come back to the public and say, well, we were doing this in the background, we did it with your money, and we have the infrastructure, we have the power now, but don't worry about it because we were protecting you from.
Sure, somebody quantify that. He's not in full control of the UFO file. He's trying to, but by doing this, he puts himself politically in front, giving the Capitol to go in and get it. You could see in that footage, I watched that footage of Obama probably 30 times. He is upset. He doesn't like what he's having to say. He tries to make it like a joke, but you can see that they're really panicked across the board about this.
Well, Obama is known for being very cool and collected, and he's very smart, and he's also got a very canny sense in the media about what not to say. For 8 years during his administration, he said zero about the UFO file. Afterwards, he said little light statements when the original 2018, 2017 releases came out during the Trump administration. They were doing the tic-tac and all this government piece. But Obama, in that clip, saying aliens are real is also historic. So Trump realized, they're trying to grab the rug out from under me before I give the July speech.
And I noticed, I saw you on X a day before Trump responded. You said they're trying to get ahead of Trump. Trump then says a day later, I'm going to get ahead of you. So it's not a debate that they're in a race now.
There's no question about it. And the idea is both sides.
So there's now a race so does Trump give us alien disclosure, or is it going to be limited from what he was given by the Pentagon? So there's a race for alien disclosure right now.
Yeah, I would say they shoved him out of his original timeline, which was in July. He was going to move forward this process, and he was going to combine it with the Golden Dome. Now, in the background, the intel forces are saying, look, we want the UFO threat. That's a national emergency that gives us emergency powers. This is an old plan for emergency powers. The less they have the ability to govern, the more they're going to go into this emergency power situation. So what we're looking at is the UFO threat piece was launched out there. That's what went through Congress, not the science part. They didn't even have good scientists up there. They had whistleblowers who were like, I'm afraid, and we have a whole plan to take them down. We're going to shoot them down. They're going to outrun us.
So instead of disclosing, they immediately go, we're not going to disclose. We got to get ready for war.
Exactly. That's why you had Elizondo and all these war-type figures out there.
And clear disinformation operatives everywhere.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I mean, these are trained counterintelligence people, and I don't know why in that whole loop on the UFO side. You know, the deep state researchers are much more effective at this. If they would adopt and get into the UFO file, they could explode the whole thing. The UFO researchers are not very deep. It's more of a pop-click environment. That's just the nature of the thing. Too many years.
Guys on Joe Rogan, I see. I was on a telephone call with Lizards. So, what is your advice? We had all this other news, and decide the real intel's coming up. What is your advice to President Trump? Because the White House listens. What is your advice? Because you were saying months ago, I wish we had a bigger crew. They're great to find your predictions all coming true. You said you got to get out ahead. You got to do it now. You got to disclose now. Trump can't wait till July. You remember saying that?
Yes, yes, and this is the key thing, that Trump needs to keep the initiative without losing his head over the fact that historically Obama or somebody else may score those points. Remember, Chuck Schumer was feeding Obama talking points about UFOs last year when they were trying to get legislation out there, and then they were going to have Obama grandstanding about it originally. In 2016, they were going to have Hillary Clinton do the whole UAP disclosure. That's where you got TTSA and Elizondo and all those people. That's the counterintelligence route. It's thin. It's actually very thin, but it's supported by that Central Intelligence Agency piece. They have the actual secret technology deep, deep in the halls of government. And I'll tell you, it's not the kind of thing, once in a while you hear, hey, we found the location of this large UFO, they put it in some building here or there. You're never going to hear about where these things are located. It is the top national security secret of the United States. And when you look at President Trump, he's someone who knows. And who does he know through? He knows through his relationship with President Nixon, which he had a very close relationship with him, which we revealed very much on our show. He knows through his close relationship with John Trump, and he knows Roy Cohn. When you put those three together, you have a lot of where the deep state buried comes. And this is, in my opinion, there's no question this is why the incredible opposition on the national security state side to President Trump and his initiatives, which are leading towards a real, actual disclosure. The thing is, Trump likes to hold those cards very closely, and he does not have possession of the UFO file. This is the nature of the problem. That's why the Space Force
said you shouldn't have done it, but maybe I'll skip ahead. So let me ask before we get a break. A bigger question, just in general. They're trying to crash the economy. They're trying to take tariffs away from him. They're trying to connect to Epstein. I've never seen any real evidence, but they've been tacitly involved. This stuff's coming out regardless. What do you make of just the overall admission at the Munich conference that the New World Order is dead, which I said years ago? I mean, I don't just agree with them. I mean, everybody hates them. Bill Gates has like a 99% hatred level. He just canceled all his events. You have the King of England's brother arrested for espionage. What's happening right now? This big picture, not just the UFOs, but the power structure.
It is. It's switching so much in the background. The other thing is that Vance used the term New World Order, just as they were saying on the other side, hey, New World Order is collapsing. So there's something strange going on in terms of influence and who's going to place who in what position. No, the Rubio group is much more neocon-oriented than the Vance group. You notice that split.
No, I mean, I favor the Vance group.
Yes.
But I think the Rubio group is probably in the pole position.
He was working that damn tank. What?
Rubio Group has an incredible power hold on the government right now, I would say. That's why you're seeing all this activity around consolidation and the Iran situation as well.
Venezuela.
You have to be... Yes, and the Venezuela thing and the use of weapons that we have not seen used on the battlefield.
And that was my next question, the discombobulation weapon. What is that?
This is incredible because when we look at this, what we're seeing is the remnants and the echo of the Havana Syndrome cases. That is the type of technology that was used. They weren't prepared to reveal it. The problem is on the world stage, there's some other actor, and this is not an actor that we're accustomed to seeing or talking about openly. It's not Russia, it's not China, and it's not the United States. So who is it? There's some other actor.
Well, it's like Epstein. It's his own corporate deal. We know, like Spectre and James Bond, you have corporations have their own armies.
Yes, exactly. We're going to get closer and closer to this. Remember, one of my favorite examples in history is the NRO. The NRO existed for 30 years, controlling the skies without regular citizens knowing anything about it. And I mean nothing. And then suddenly it comes out in 1994. So right now, what's the group handling the UFO file that's an actual government administrative office? Where is it? It's already there. It's just that it's not officially disclosed. So part of what Trump is doing, and part of the pressure, this also was when he was trying to place Lockheed Martin under the executive branch by saying, hey, we're going to take the most stock in it. He realizes that these various groups, Lockheed, Boeing, and others, have consolidated. Northrop Grumman, they've been working on the UFO file. How do you get it back if it was released from executive control as long as 70 years ago? And this has been the quest in the heart of it, because if you can move that back under executive
Well, it goes back
control,
to Eisenhower. He said, I'll raid you with an army.
Yes, exactly. And what's amazing to me is that the President Kennedy aspect, if you go back there, the clash is so open with that national security state and with the CIA side. But if you go into it now and clear the cobwebs of some 60 years, you'll find people in the background saying Kennedy's assassinated over the UFO file who were in the government. Now, where does that come from? Now, that doesn't come just from research. That's people saying it on the inside. So why were they hearing about it back then? No, this is the issue, and it's the top issue in the national security state.
Well, it is, but look at Doge sent out an email to all these federal employees. 53% didn't respond back. That same thing, Eisenhower, Kennedy, they're like, give me answers. No.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so you're just, outside of the reach of actual presidential control. Amazing.
Yeah, people need to understand, Trump is not in complete control, folks. We'll be right back with Daniel List, our journalist. Huge news straight ahead. Stay with us. Today and tomorrow, the last days to get 100 times X entries into the amazing raffle. It only happens every few months, where both of the offerings of the Shelby Mustang and the awesome Ford off-road truck, 100X for every dollar you spend on the store, put into the raffle. You get put in for just the next 2 days, is all that's left, to get both vehicles. There's a time where there's a crossover for 1 week. That ends tomorrow. Every order in the site for a very limited time, it's probably just last throughout the weekend, I'm told, is this hat. And this is a classic design that I put out on InfoWars like 20 years ago. Notice everybody else copied it, which is cool. I just go, why don't we have that classic design back? So they brought it back. And it's a ring of 13 stars around 1776. And it's simple, it's clean, and a leftist probably won't kill you or murder you for it. If you have like a MAGA or InfoWars hat, that's a real adventure. This is just at the airport or wherever there's a store. Hey, Patriots know. And it's just exciting. Spreads the word. So every order, on top of the sales that are already there, for a limited time, gets a free 1776 ball cap at theoliveshowstore.com. And if you're going to buy anything on the store, become a VIP for $30 a month. You can cancel anytime for free. Instantly, you get $40 to spend each month. The minute you click that button for $30, you get $40 to spend. Special deals, special offers, special sales, stuff, everything. So anybody buying anything should be a VIP. And it's really no commitment. You just get better deals. $20 for free, one click in your profile. Everyone should be a VIP. Also, sometimes stuff runs out and sells out. You want it to happen? Become a subscriber. Cancel anytime. They hold it back for you at the biggest discounts as well. Become a VIP. Become a subscriber. But regardless, share the live feeds of the show. Tell folks about those local AM and FM stations, cable stations, because that's how we reach the people, and that's how we change the world. The whole globalist house of cards is coming down. We've been vindicated. You've been vindicated. Nothing's going to stop that. Stay with us. Massive guest straight ahead.
Receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
Lord, I can't change. Won't you fly free, bird?
A major Caltech scientist over near-Earth objects was murdered in the last 24 hours. This ties into the deep state's operations. Our journalist Daniel List is going to be breaking it down in the hour. I'm going to host a little bit more, but I want to just leave and eat my lunch. Listen to him, because he's better when I'm not here, though he wants me to stay with him. He's got a whole list of documents he's going to go over and so much more. This is the real meat and potatoes of this hour. But your message to Trump, I know this, you know this, but listeners are great, but I can barely keep track. Explain, you have the ex-protect group that's the bad guys. You have the people that want to release everything. Trump's part of that. What is your advice in the short segment to Trump?
Part of the UFO declassification process should include the continuity of government players because they're the same team, and those are the largest secrets in that deep state that control so many aspects over the executive branch. Now, to bring the UFO file back under the executive branch is a quest inside the Trump administration. And like I said, he did it with Space Force. He's done it with other things. But right now, the declassification of these documents and his announcement, early announcement, because he was really forced into this timeline by Obama, he was going to do this in July, and the reason I think he was choosing that was this idea of the 250th anniversary of the United States. Now, this is very interesting. His mentor, in many ways, Richard Nixon, and where he got so many of his deep ideas about the presidency. Nixon himself, in 1976, was also going to do a gigantic UFO revelation in 1976 for the 200th anniversary, and that didn't end up happening. So what Trump needs to do is make sure that he's not cut off at the most crucial point in dealing with it. And the way to do that is to go directly into the military contractor backgrounds and where they move the actual scientific information from cases like the Roswell case and others, instead of getting that whitewash of like, here's some documents, and then like the JFK, it doesn't go anywhere. It's like, oh, here's some frill for the media, but we don't actually get to any deep points. Now, what I was thinking about that Trump can do particularly is dealing with groups like Boeing, dealing with groups like Lockheed, and saying, well, I've directed Hegseth to get me all of this as part of the Department of War. Well, you're going to have to deal with them, and there has to be a way to compel them to make that a public point. So you're going to have to use the bully pulpit in a way that he's
exactly. How does he put pressure on the mad scientist?
I think by literally outlining this as a breakaway group. Now, he's the one who came on
I agree.
board.
He has to identify them. It's the deep state.
Yeah.
People know it's true.
Yes,
It wouldn't sound crazy 10 years ago. Everyone knows it already.
There's no question about it. And he himself, I think, has adjusted to this reality in many ways. He has, over the years, you know, when they were trying to throw him in prison and everything else, he's come out in very, very blunt terms about this secret group controlling things in the background. Now, as the president, he needs to say, we need a clear opening of this information, and also that he'll share it with the scientists in this country, and that the groups around the world need to share theirs as well, so that the Russians, the Chinese, and all
We're
the rest
talking
of it.
free energy, everything. Just do it. God.
Yeah, well, they have their own programs, and they're not doing anything. They're not going to release anything. What they constantly do, though, is there's a kind of UFO espionage going on in the background. What they try to do is release this information, you know, like the Russians when they were fighting the Ukrainians. They were saying, we shot down a UFO over Moscow. Well, shooting down a UFO is very different than saying we're shooting down a drone. They know, as a matter of fact, their UFO file is right up there neck and neck with the United States. So the fact that the world get on board with what this is, and again, I can break down here how we have these different levels of where the technology is coming from, but there's no question that it's there. The advanced technology is
Are the
there.
aliens just giving us, like, gifts? Like, we think we're getting it, they're just giving it to us?
Yeah, well, there is this idea out there that they crashed them on purpose, etc. Because how could you go through all of these different galaxies and then crash when you get here? I just think there's a law of accident when it comes to anybody and anything. And I think when they get here, you know, they can just as easily.
Well, that's right. If you got a super highway of stuff, but still they're just creatures like us, they're going to get, stuff happens.
Yeah, especially if they're sending out androids over here to check out the terrain. Yeah, an android can sometimes get their programming messed up, let's face it.
A biological android.
Yes, exactly. And that's what we
We'll be right back. I am making this historic announcement on Friday, December 12th, 2025. The future of InfoWars hangs in the balance. It is in your hands. They're having a state auction in January next year in about a month, but we don't even have the money for payroll or for satellites or for bandwidth. We've got this next shot to survive, but if we don't get the funds in, we shut down. So we're selling 3 emergency limited edition posters at InfoWarsStore.com right now that are critical to us staying on the air. I want to encourage you to go now to get I Have Not Yet Begun to Fight, John Paul Jones poster, and 2 others, Make No Peace with Evil and Defend the West, Iconic Crusade. Go now to InfoWarsStore.com to get 1 or more of these iconic posters, limited edition. We cannot do it without you. I have fired the bat signal. Take action now if you want to stand with us in this fight at InfoWarsStore.com, and I salute you for your support.
You are listening to an Infowars.com frontline report. If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
And for years, Steven Spielberg, at the heart of UFO pre-programming, I think probably with Expertech, correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel List, our journalist, has been building towards this. Now in mid-June, he comes out with his disclosure project. Everything is coming to a head. Right now, the Catholic Church is saying get ready for this. Something big's about to happen. Here's a short first look today of what's coming out in June with Spielberg's new Close Encounters.
If you found out we weren't alone, if someone showed you, would that frighten you?
So something big is about to happen, Daniel List.
No question about it. Look at the UFO bigwigs lining up for this summer. You've got actually Jerry Bruckheimer, who just did Top Gun Maverick. He's doing a UFO movie. You've got Spielberg doing Disclosure Day. Forget it. They have an S4 movie coming out about Bob Lazar, all within about 6 weeks of each other. Well, that's pretty good marketing if you think about it. So, you know, they realize the fix is in for so much of this. And, of course, there was an earlier example of this, actually, when Biden was vice president, and he went out and said, oh, yeah, we might find life on Mars. And then they put out the Matt Damon Mars movie right after that. They are in sync. There's no question about it. And Spielberg, deep, deep, deep in the intel tank.
So what you're saying he's Expertech or what?
Well, I think that they use him. There's no question about it. He might even be somebody who wants to learn the truth about these things, but they're masters of co-opting those types of people. I've even seen it around in the UFO field. It's remarkable because what they're masters at are that kind of manipulation. The question is, their narrative and their alien narrative, their human history narrative, is totally not anything that's going to be correct for us, because they're going to spit that out and keep that and try to change that.
Let's be clear, when they came up with Prometheus 12 years ago or 15 years ago, whatever it was, I already said this is the elites transpermia thing or whatever the aliens made us. And then Ridley Scott does a New York Times interview and says, no, we in the elite believe aliens created us, and this is our origin, real Garden of Eden. This is our religion. So they were telling us right there.
It's true. And that's the kind of social engineering that they want to get out there in the public, that they believe in this. What's interesting, too, is that in their version of the Tree of Life, you actually go around all of the spiritual development and you go right through to the mineral level. That's the technology, and that is this kind of harmonic force that they are into. When you think about this, the alien part plays very, very closely into this because they like the idea of...
They want to bypass spiritual, which is just higher dimensions or other dimensions, and make it all about silicon.
Exactly right. And what's interesting to me is the way that they're doing it. The story that they put out, the minute they allowed the UFO file story to go out broadly in 2017 through the New York Times, signaled a gigantic change, because before that they were saying, oh no, that was us, that was our own craft, whatever, you know, it was somebody looking at the planet Venus. Then suddenly they got behind this. They realized in that period that the top Google search in 2016 was UFOs, and they said we need at this point.
Yeah, they can't get away with covering up anymore, so then they know it's coming out. They want to control that. You're about to take over with a huge list of things you sent us. You're about to host the last 50 minutes. Daniel List, our journalist, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. I'm not funded by Qatar. Thank you, brother. I'm not funded by Qatar, Israel, the U.S. government, anybody. I'm funded by you at thealexjonestore.com. The products are incredible. Tonight, big sale ends. 100x entries to win the Super Truck or the Ford Shelby. The planet's only line every 2 months where you win both deals same time, $20,000 cash. That's a side issue. You want the ultramethylene blue. You want the Irish sea moss. These are all incredible. The Trilogy. You want these products. TheAlexJonesStore.com, and everybody. Where's the hat? Here it is over here. Every order until Monday. Very simple, clean hat. Black hat. Ring of Stars 7076. I designed it. A true classic. Everybody gets a free hat. TheYellowShowStore.com. And everybody who's going to buy anything should be a VIP. You can cancel for any time. You spend $30 at checkout. You usually get $40 to spend at checkout. You make $10 right there off your order. Special deals, special sales, special offers. We fund with great products that enrich and empower your life. Great patron apparel. It's a win-win, and we've changed the world together. Please go to theyellowshowstore.com right now and get 100x entries on both vehicles and everything else. I really appreciate all your support. Now, Daniel List sent me some amazing exhibits here. Dark Journalist takes over right now. Daniel List, you are in command now.
Fantastic. And thank you, Alex. And thank you for addressing this really, really deep subject matter. I always call you an architect of the independent media, and I think stepping forward on this is so timely because you have that ability to influence the culture to really wake up around what they're doing with the UFO file. With some of the exhibits, what I want to go through is that the scientists that are associated with the UFO file become a flashpoint in the war going on between the two sides around it. One of the things I mentioned in relation to the assassination of Dr. Lorero, who's an MIT physicist, and he was a plasma physicist in charge of the ultra plasma project going on over there with some of the highest level scientists. And he was assassinated in Brookline, Massachusetts, which is actually very close by. And that community is very buttoned up. It's very hard for somebody to go in there and commit a crime like that and then just take off and, as his assailant did. Now, Valente, the shooter, was found 3 days later in his storage shed over the border into New Hampshire. And there's that strange combination of, how Ghislaine Maxwell was grabbed in New Hampshire. There's some kind of route that takes you out of Boston and into the New Hampshire area to kind of gain cover. But in the case of Lorero, the one thing that I really find fascinating about his work is that he was working on something called a neutron star merger. Now, that is such a super secret and kind of explosive area of technology, and it is literally the creation of black holes and when two stars nova together. So the idea that they were working on was some small aspect of that neutron star merger being used to replicate the entire project. So that's unlimited energy. It's also highly dangerous and all the rest of it. But to have him assassinated in December and then to have this Caltech assassinated physicist just happened here in Los Angeles, I think is very telling because we're getting around the kind of end game with the UFO file. The UFO file, we've heard, through parents, grandparents, intergenerationally and everything else, what's going on is that people have had encounters, and they've had encounters with beings, they've had encounters with craft. So how do you make, what do you make of all this? You've got psychologists who've looked into it, you've got physicists, scientists, the media, researchers. And what do we really have at the end of the day, besides a lot of movies and a lot of speculation? What we have is a group inside the national security states, and I've dubbed the group X-Protect because they work with a certain type of technology, which is extraordinary as it sounds, is X technology. And this technology operates in a different field of energetic environments, and I refer to that as apotheum. It's a reality distortion environment. And this is the thing that they've been studying inside the government in terms of these crashes and things like that. When people have encounters or when they send scientists in to study these crashed craft, what they're actually getting is these strange sensations that they're walking through things. And when they're abducted, they're missing time. Time in their life seems to go away. The appearance of UFOs also cause an electrical grid to go down. This is all because the field generated by the entry of the unidentified flying object is from a totally different line of humanity. And it's a totally different aspect going on there in terms of physics. Its line of physics is definitely different than what we operate with here on Earth. So what we're looking at is a group coming in with that. And when we see that happening, as we start to get a really close-up look on the UFOs in World War II, because we had flight, we had dramatic, besides the early cases that were going on, we had something rather dramatic happening in the skies. Now, I have a few exhibits I'm going to share with you today in dealing with this. We needed to get a good look at this. One of these revolves around an airship group that made a prediction about an individual that was going to come along and kind of fulfill the magic of all their technology. And they were a group that was around even in the 1860s, and they were far beyond the Wright brothers. They were operating, they came out of Germany originally and operated out of California. But so that exhibit is Exhibit 4, and this kind of strange Delchau painting, this obscure painter who was associated and tracking them was originally spying on this airship group who was demonstrating early advanced technology as far back as the 19th century. Clearly in the middle of this, and this is a verified painting, it's been in museums for years. If you look at the top there, it says Trump. There's no question about it. This mysterious Nimza group through the Sonora group put this together. And Delchau, who was the painter, they discovered all of his works many, many years later, he put it up there. And on the bottom right here, if you go diagonally straight down to the right, it says 45, which is the art series, but it's also Trump is the 45th president of the United States. These types of hints are left as a result. Yeah, it's right in there, 45. And these types of hints are left by the mystery schools. These are groups that can see things that are to come, and it's also a kind of predictive programming that they're laying in there. The idea is, how do they know that someone named Trump is going to be associated with this version of advanced space flight all the way back there in the 19th century? So when we look at that, I think we get a real handle on what they're doing. Now, the next one I want to show is one that was suppressed here. This is the exhibit is 3. This third exhibit is fascinating to me because it comes to us from Scotland. And as someone who was at the Sheffield University had emailed me the original of this photo. It's quite fascinating. But if you look at this photo, what you're going to see is a plane tracking in the Scottish mountains, the Scottish hills, this incredibly sized craft, which is at least 5 times as large as the plane itself. Now, the picture is from 1990. The Department of Defense, Ministry of Defense in the UK hid this picture until 2022. So that picture was off the radar for 32 years. There's a reason for that. And I think what we're looking at there is the essence of what we're talking about when we get around the UFO file. There's an aspect here that we've been able to redevelop and put in the skies. There's also another aspect which belongs more to the environment of something we don't know anything about, and we're tracking it. And we use our best craft to track it. One of the funny things that we see very often is when Elon Musk talks about how SpaceX hasn't seen any aliens or whatever. Well, SpaceX, it's very clear, has the second largest version of exhibits in their libraries of UFO video, satellite feeds, and everything else because they're up there. But they can't say anything because of their contract with DARPA. So you're never going to hear UFO disclosure from SpaceX. And that's why Musk can sit there with a straight face and say, there are no aliens. Well, he clearly knows different, but he can't say anything about it. It's fascinating to me, though, because one of the battles in the background was over NASA's footage. And NASA also has an incredible treasure trove of footage that comes directly under control of the Department of Defense. It's quite interesting because in the background there's this battle that was taking place between President Kennedy in the beginning and the setup of NASA and him trying to get it out of the military role and into a scientific role. So I think when we look at this, what happened is this snapped off and broke away. It was a version of the space program. They developed it on their own. They've done it with the public's money, but they created all this space infrastructure. And in the middle of that, they still had the promise of the assassinated president to go to the moon in 1969. So they were going to have to do something in relation to this without exposing the technology in their own experiments. What they ended up doing was this very limited program with very limited aspects of the technology. And in 1972, they just said, hey, we're going to stop. No more moon missions, no more manned moon missions. We're just going to send probes around, and that's how it's going to go. In the mid-1980s, of course, we had the Challenger, and that was going to be the return of manned flight. It was going to incorporate average citizens, teachers, and others. And that got off the ground and exploded. That is the end of President Kennedy's dream of a manned space program, and the idea that he humanity goes out into space and we make it a war-free environment, an incredible sea of science and that kind of surprising aspect of the growth of humanity that could take place with all the amazing discoveries in space. Instead, you've got a warlike thing building up in the background, which has now taken us into war. You know, space is a war-fighting domain, war this, war that. Let's put this up there. Let's put nuclear reactors to the moon so we can, you know, power up these AI stations that we're setting up to take over every aspect of your life. Obviously, this is incredible totalitarian control in the wrong hands. And the question is always going to be, what are the wrong hands when it comes to this? And this is where I think we get into a lot of problems with it. But I think that what President Kennedy was looking at and what other concerned presidents like Reagan and now Trump were the aspect of where is the power base around the UFO file? That is the unidentified technology. Who has it inside the government? And why does the executive branch no longer control that? This is the key aspect. We need to ask ourselves this. How could a group inside the government get enough power to basically blackmail the government with their own advanced technology? And how could that set up all of these different things like the black budget, like missing money, and like this incredible infrastructure going on and the setup of infrastructure in space that the public isn't aware of and doesn't know anything about? This is the nature of the situation. I think part of it has to do with the fact that so much of this was filtered over to the corporate American side, and it was under the control of this shadowy corridor between aerospace and the intelligence agencies. We're still up against that force, and that force is still exerting its control. One of its manifestations of late is this kind of great Golden Dome idea. And you might think, well, you know, this is a great idea. We'll shoot down the missiles before they come in. Unfortunately, in the wrong hands, it becomes the ultimate surveillance tool. And many of the companies that are signing up to be a part of it are masters of surveillance. So I think what needs to happen here is the general citizenry needs to get their hands back on the steering wheel and drive the situation into a totally different environment. That's the challenge for us, I think, here at this point. One of the other exhibits I want to show is Exhibit 1. I'm going to get into this a little bit because in so many of the UFO encounters, you hear about the encounters with the beings themselves, and there's too many people for this, and it's intergenerational to ignore, you know. And long before there were movies and TV shows about it, there was this whole thing about these people would have these encounters. Now, this being, they called Junior as kind of a nickname after the fact, was what Betty and Barney Hill were dealing with. And the figure stood about 4 foot 10 inches tall and conducted experiments on them, explained some things to them. One of the things that she emphasized was that it's totally different than what they portray as the grays, as it were, when it comes to the UFO encounter experience. And you can see that this figure looks very much like a human being. It doesn't really look that different. It's not like the gray alien with the big bug eyes and everything else. So what is going on there? I think it's very clear to take from that. This is an eyewitness encounter. You look at it the same way you would a crime scene. What does the eyewitness see? What does that tell you? When you get the sketch artist in, this is what they describe. And basically, it looks like another person. It looks like a person who is bald with larger eyes. And striking figures. Striking features. What I would say when looking at this is you could be looking at a human offshoot that is coming directly from this planet, has adopted and incorporated more advanced technology, and is somehow, you know, playing in or passing off the deception that they are coming here from an interstellar place. And we are automatically assuming that. Not necessarily the case. As a matter of fact, there are many cases in history and echoes of advanced civilizations in the past. So the idea is, did somebody preserve this technology that was very advanced in the past, and are we living in that kind of environment now? Is this what we're seeing? And did we kind of catch up in the 20th century into the 21st century, and now we're starting to look at an equal basis on this? Whatever the revelation, President Trump's announcement now takes on an entirely different meaning, because if you're getting to the heart of the UFO file, you're going to have to deal with questions like that too. It's not just, is there an off-world civilization, diming in here with their scientific group and, going and analyzing people and taking their sperm and taking their fertility and creating hybrids with it. Now you're talking about who would be doing that if they were based here on Earth. What kind of a group would be responsible for an organization like that who would be basically creating farms of human beings with human material and human genetics. This is, I think, the heart of the study around the UFO file, and it is fascinating because there's too many incredible stories on record. The worst aspect with the UFO file, I think, is where it's gone now, which is all these CIA people coming up and saying, I'm a whistleblower and, I've been abducted and all this stuff. The counterintelligence narrative is going to get us so far away from that truth. One of the other slides I wanted to show before we wrap up here is Exhibit 2. This is interesting to me because it comes from a researcher named Mark McCandlish, and he was very close to these Air Force programs around advanced prototypes for the craft that we were using. And he also died under very mysterious circumstances. We're getting too used to this pattern of people, when they get around the UFO file, they die under suspicious circumstances. But I thought that this craft that he described, it has always stayed with me. And he put a number of these paintings out. And this drawing is what we had developed in the 1960s. It was the flux liner, and it looks very much like the redeveloped UFO technology. This flux liner operated in a totally anti-gravity situation, and it had done remarkable feats that he had witnessed in watching the craft, and he remembered it, and he was an artist, and he drew it. This is what we're really talking about, which is we've already had these two tracks of development going on, the Breakaway X technology going on one hand, and then what we see on the surface, the stealth bomber and things of this nature. So the question is, if they're running 50, 60, 70 years ahead of us here in the public, what is the technology that they actually control? And then the other question we must ask is it possible to fake an alien invasion with that technology? And here's the really banger of the question at the end of all that. It's the third level, which is, what if you're doing an alien invasion, a fake kind of blue beam, street legend type alien invasion, and the real thing showed up? They definitely know there's a real thing. It's interrupted our own launches, it's interrupted our own nuclear facilities, and it's interrupted a number of things, including our activities on the moon. And of course, there are those legends there that the reason we stopped going to the moon in 1972 was because we were warned off, as it were. Now, there's certainly a gigantic aspect in the middle of that, and even the slightest disclosure is explosive. I think that the fact that President Trump has taken it upon himself to do this is extraordinary, and we're seeing that in the midst of all this. We're getting some real insight into President Trump and his kind of analysis of the situation, that we're going into a totally different paradigm. It's great to see everyone. I'll be on my show, Dark Journalist, on YouTube tonight at 8 p.m. Please join me. And it's been great to be here. And thank you, Alex and the team. Just incredible crew. We'll talk soon.
Got to get to a point where we are self-sufficient again, Texas. And when it comes to health, also food, our food needs to be clean, number one. It just needs to be clean. And
Florida has pointed out, put that back on screen, all these major brands have got hundreds of times the glyphosate you should have.
Glyphosate.
Absolutely. Well, your doctor tells what that does.
Oh, this is gonna change your brain. This is going to set you up.
It erases your blood-brain barrier.
Oh yeah.
So it's really an accelerant or an adjuvant. Absolutely. Everything in there. Explain that.
It destroys the blood-brain barrier. So that's a protective thing that happens between the cerebral spinal fluid and your fluids inside the brain and the things that attack it from the outside. But once that barrier is depleted, then it's subject to all kinds of heavy metals, things that get sprayed from the sky, right? Barium, aluminum, all these things that it protects you from. When methylene blue works, it counters that.
Let me ask you that. 45 minutes in, you feel it, Doc?
Yeah, I feel pretty good.
Be honest though, you got your own special brand. Is this good or what?
No, this is the same effect I'm getting, but it feels right. Yeah, it feels right. Yes, a little easier to take. Yeah.
By easier, what do you mean compared
just
to
in the way it feels, just going down drinking. It's
So this one tastes better, but it's as good as the one your doctor did.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, so your doctor must have a good one.
We'll see. We'll go down the road a little ways. I'll text you.
Guys, get him a couple bottles of this. I need Doc Chambers endorsing this.
I'll not get it for free, but I'll definitely help.
No, you're getting it down. Come on. Free your blood. It's amazing.
Hey, this is Dr. Chambers here. I'm out in the field right now. Day off from the campaign trail, doing some work. I got things to catch up on. So it's called a refit day. So I'm getting refit with Alex Jones's methylene blue. It's pretty good. I got to say, I've been using it on the road since we left the studios. And I've been taking it for a while. I had a traumatic brain injury in Iraq in 2004. There's been a lot of studies out there that show that with post-dementia patients and TBI patients, this has been used for years. It's just not very well known with regard to demyelination, what it can do to improve your cognition. So that's your brain. The brain housing these stuff. Hey, thanks, Alex. Appreciate you. We're going to stay on it.
Powered by Methylene Blue, Ultra Methylene Blue at thealexshowstore.com.
Whatever the future may hold, InfoWars will always live forever. The fight will continue. Be sure to follow us on X at Real Alex Jones and at AJN Live. And now you can download the #1 news app in the world. Go to AlexJonesApp.com and let the Democrat Deep State Party know that we will never be silenced.
I love knives. I know you love knives. They have finally gotten a whole bunch of the knives that were sold out back in, and they've gotten a bunch of new, really nice flip knives. These bad boys right here. I mean, these are absolutely amazing. Flip really easy and locks for you. This is Forest Green, murdered out. It's got my little signature on it, so it's a little piece of history. It's a great memento. It's a great gift for your friends and family, and it funds the operation. And they're up to 50% off right now at thealexshowstore.com. And while you're there, get some ultramethylene blue.
What do you got there? Angel eyes?
It's a new Patriot Silver folding knife from the AlexJonesStore.com.
Hey, Blondie, look at me. I got all three.
Leading a frontal assault on the lies of the New World Order, it's Alex Jones.
Unveiling the truth they don't want you to see. This is the Alex Jones Show.
Wow, fantastic. An incredible Friday here as we're looking at an historic announcement that goes deep, deep into the heart of the deep state and deep, deep into the heart of the black budget. It goes into the X-Protect group, the UFO file. This is not any kind of a casual Friday by any stretch of the imagination. I'm dark journalist Daniel List, and we're going deep here tonight, looking really at something that I would say has to do with a crossover of scientific work on one side and these incredible revelations on the other. And, you know, one of the things that came up during last week, it was President's Day and all the rest of it. And I made a chart of these different presidents and their involvement with the UFO file. But while I was doing that, of course, it occurred to me all the things about Nixon and Trump. I have an exhibit there, Exhibit 6, I wanted to show. And I want to talk about the deep relationship on the presidential level between these two, because it was President Nixon who had been part of the original Blue Book, which was CIA Blue Book, the actual program that took place in the 1950s. But Trump had adopted a relationship with Nixon and actually got him in office in New York, and they exchanged letters for years and became close. In fact, at a certain point, Nixon even predicted that Trump would become president in one of his famous letters. But I think further than that, what we're looking at is Trump coming in with this baked-in knowledge around the UFO file, because the fact that his uncle had worked with Vannevar Bush and had been the protege of Vannevar Bush at MIT, and it was Bush, of course, who sent him in to get the Tesla records and to see if there was, in fact, information there regarding this totally alternative energy source and a death ray. And it's interesting, if you go back to the actual conversation that he had in relation to this, that is John Trump with the FBI, they said, what we want in particular is information regarding taking down flying objects at a great distance. That was the area of research that they were interested in Nikola Tesla for. And that, if you just put the unidentified part in that, you've got how do we take down UFOs at a distance, which is basically what they ended up doing, because UFO became the actual headquarters of the UFO file in the beginning. And they coined the term UFO and they coined the term X-Files, which is quite interesting when we get into it. On that presidential side, you can see John Trump harboring this information. You know, he'd been part of these secret projects in the UK. He'd been part of these secret projects in going into Paris with Eisenhower. So John Trump wasn't just, you know, a kind of a nerdy professor at MIT. This is somebody in the very heart of the dynamic research of particle smashing, what eventually gave us CERN and microwave radiation, space contacts, and everything else. John Trump was at the very height of that. Very often, President Trump is fond of saying, Uncle John and the things that he gave me. You know, he gave me all this. He told me all about nuclear before anyone knew the secrets of nuclear. So he's indicating, even in early interviews, that Uncle John is a big influence on him. By the time he gets into office, one of the main things he will use as a calling card when he gets into different type of squabbles in government is this strange kind of lilting story back there about how his Uncle John Trump gave him so much and he was so advanced beyond everyone else and all the rest of it. And the truth is, it's a fact, because John Trump was not only deep in the Tesla X technology, he was deep in the UFO file through Vannevar Bush. So you see, the crisscross there is dramatic, and it needs to be looked at in history. I've done a number of episodes on it. I've even done a documentary on it. But what I think we need to look at now is Trump is up against all of this as 47th president of the United States. Here's the clash. That deep state is more powerful than ever with him getting into office. And as they demonstrated by getting Biden into office, as they demonstrated with the COVID operation and others, the deep state is probably at the height, the zenith of its powers, but it's also been shell-shocked by the reactions against it. So we're in a very kind of, I called it perilous, and I think I'll stick with the term when it comes to this. But one of the little things that got missed at the end of the Trump administration was this unusual mention of what was basically the Israel Space Defense Chief saying that extraterrestrials had contacted President Trump. And this actually is Exhibit 5 in my feed, but what's going on there is quite fascinating because it's before Trump leaves office. It's 2019. And it's the head of the Israeli space program, and his name is Haim Eshed. And Haim Eshed would be like, you know, Jared Isaacman or somebody over here. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, that's Nuno Livero, the professor. It must be 7, I suppose. Yeah, it's 7, actually. Nuno Livero, of course, is the scientist who was unceremoniously removed, and he was actually shot in his apartment. On the porch, just like this other scientist, Carl Grillmeyer, Caltech scientist, both of them working on this ultra-secret aspect of dark matter and the neutron star merger tech. And there are tragedies in both cases. I think we can learn a great deal from these people who are trying to reach out, as it were, and give us, you know, a totally different understanding of, and they were really achieving some things. I think in the case of Lerrero, the bizarre trek of his assailants, you know, performing these murders at Brown University and then coming up, somehow finding him in his Brookline apartment and shooting him, is something that, again, gives that hint that the group around X-Protect, their expertise is removing the people that they feel are obstacles, and very often they can discredit them. You know, you can look at the different cases through history. Even people like Jim Garrison in the Kennedy assassination were discredited over and over again. You could kind of control them by destroying their reputations. That happened very often. The other one I wanted to see is actually Exhibit 7, I believe. And that's the one I was referring to. And that has to do with the NASA space chief of Israel, their version of NASA. And him saying, Trump was contacted by this galactic council and, he was going to disclose, but they said, no, we don't think humanity's quite ready for it yet, but they're coming along. I mean, these are dramatic things. Unless he had lost complete control of his senses during this period, you'd have to wonder why this guy would come out and say this under any circumstances, disinformation or otherwise. But it was an extraordinary statement, and it happened right in the period when Trump was doing his own version of the Space Force. And so what Jaime said was extraterrestrials exist, and Trump knows all about it. There's a galactic group here, and they are, monitoring our operations. Well, I think we could look at this from a few different levels, because we can say, on one hand, it's quite possible that there's a galactic council and that they do off-world operations and that scientific groups from other civilizations come here. I think it's very possible that this is true, and there's a lot of evidence that points toward it. On the other hand, there's been so much disinformation about that they've been setting up in the background this false version of a UFO threat. And the UFO threat is something that we need to get our minds wrapped around when it comes to this type of advanced technology, exotic technology. This is the stuff that the corporations have been pouring billions in for in the background. And if we can understand, if we get a snapshot of who they are, then we realize this battle's been going on ever since John Trump showed up at the safe to look at Tesla's papers in 1943. That's a long time. And, we've gone through World War II, the Kennedy assassination, the Vietnam War, Iran-Contra, 9/11. And these deep events, over and over again, the personnel and the people involved show up as part of this emergency planning branch, the continuity of government branch. So what is a better way to bring in COG, as it were, the continuity of government group, than to literally say, you know what? There's a space emergency. There are all these UFOs in the sky, and, we need NORAD to take over, and here's your COG commander. Now, one of the things I think the public needs to understand when it comes to the COG commander is he is the NORTHCOM commander. So you've got him as the NORTHCOM commander, he is the NORAD commander, and he's the COG combatant commander. And the reason that's important is in the event of a national emergency, they flip the switch and turn on continuity of government. He becomes the combatant commander of the United States. The president, Congress, everything's moved aside. He's the one. And what he does is he appoints regional governors in that event. And the regional governors will control things until, everything gets back to normal. And we've created a situation where it's possible that, basically you'll run an election again and all the rest. Of course, in a real emergency like the one they're planning, that would never happen. So what happens is, during this course of events, this general takes over. Now, the general in question, General Dio, who's in there now, he's the NORTHCOM commander, as I mentioned. He has a connection now to the Florida Air Base where it was rumored that they had stored UFO material. So there seems to be some kind of a fingerprint of these groups whenever you get around the emergency powers aspect. And the commander before him was actually part of the 509th group. And when you think about the 509th group, even though this was many years later, the 509th was the original group that found the Roswell material. And in that case, a massive spaceship crashed over a ranch, and there were all these strange metal fragments everywhere. And what was it that the intelligence officer, Jesse Marcel, described years later? Because they covered up the incident and nobody talked about it for 30 years. But he came out at the end of his life and said they were covered in hieroglyphs. So you see, we're dealing with something very, very unusual. It could be very, very old or very, very in the future. It's a kind of a future path type situation when we look at it. Now, I would say that it's crucial for us to understand that continuity of government is not some mythical aspect. It's a crucial part of the government. As a matter of fact, COG was called during 9/11, and they, that whole switch got flipped. Now, what I would say when looking at this is that they were doing that as kind of a dry run for what they would do in the future with the UFO threat. And strangely enough, when you go back there in history and listen to certain people like Fletcher Prouty, who was somebody who worked for the Joint Chiefs between the CIA and the Joint Chiefs for years, and he had put out a number of things about the secret team and how, you know, he was very clear that Kennedy was assassinated by the Central Intelligence Agency. It's interesting because at the end of his life, he puts out something in 1997, which is a new version of the book, The Secret Team, and in there he says, UFOs and aliens are being prepped for this role now that we used to have the Russians in. It's this kind of national security threat. So, you know, it's very clear to some people, but for some reason in the UFO field, it's all take on the CIA people, take on the NGA people, take on the NRO people. They know, they'll give us the truth, etc. So one of the key things to watch about President Trump's effort in regard to all the things that you see going on here is what is President Trump going to do in relation to who is going to be on the search for these different files, artifacts, and even recovered materials from alien spacecraft? Who is actually in the heart of that? Because if it is the CIA doing the cleanup, if it's the NGA doing the cleanup on that, you're not going to get any real answers. You're going to get invented ones. Because, you know, we have to understand this also on kind of a psycho-spiritual level, which is it's the ultimate hope of these groups that what they can do is actually take you and I and give us a totally different human origin story. Because their greatest rival, in a sense, is religion. And what they've tried to do is come up with various aspects of what this could be, and they've played them out, and they've taken in different types of data mining as a result of this. Part of that they want to do is say, well, the super overlords came from somewhere else. They came here, and there's an elite group here, and that's why we should, you know, give all our power over to the machines. These are real plans, and this is the amazing thing about it. And I would think that when we look at the aspects of the government that deal with the UFO file, we have each individual branch, the Navy, the Air Force, the Army. If you look at these different groups, they each have their own hold on the UFO track. As a matter of fact, I remember talking to the Canadian Defense Minister, Paul Hellyer, at the time, and telling him, look, you know, how do they keep the secrecy at this level? And he was someone who was very open, spoke very openly about the fact that there were UFOs and visitors here from off-world planets. And he said, well, what they do, the way that they set it up is they have, in the background, agreements where the militaries in Canada talk to the militaries in the United States, and they leave out the executive branch. Now, think about that. Very often, everyone says, well, the president can declassify UFOs and everything else, and Trump is making that effort now. This is the effort to pull the UFO file back under the executive umbrella. And a lot of the things, you know, what I try to do on the Dark Journalist show is give us some foundation for how to see how that background is playing out on this level. And I think we've seen a great deal of it going on in relation to this in the Trump-Obama flex here. You know, Obama flexed and said aliens exist. It's a pretty large-scale statement. I mean, Obama, in his era, in his time, you know, he wasn't Joe Biden. He was actually fairly popular in his first term. And I think that this is somebody that people, you know, especially on the Democrat side, would absolutely listen to. Even though he was so quiet in relation to, the UFO file during his presidency, barely anything came out there. They were waiting for Hillary to come in for the whole piece. But one of the things that I brought to the attention of the public around Obama is this, that he is involved as executive producer, putting out something called White Mountains, which is a Netflix presentation movie, major movie, been in development for 2 years, all about the Betty and Barney Hill abduction case in New Hampshire, a long time ago, where they were driving up there in the White Mountains in New Hampshire, and suddenly a light followed their car, and they heard a beeping sound, they saw people on the road, and basically they were abducted into a large spacecraft. Tests were done on them, and they came out of this, and when they had got back home, they realized many hours were missing. This is a classic example, but in 1961, when that happened, it wasn't so classic. So the question is, where does so much of this come from? And I think if we, take a look at what was happening in the zeitgeist, in the era, we start to get a handle on how this is 60 years later, the same problem playing out in the background. It's the same clash of the deep state and the ex-protected group that we had going on, in fact, in 1963. I would say that in 1963, with the assassination of President Kennedy, you had the end of an early disclosure effort by President Kennedy, which was first nation to nation, as he was going to share it with Khrushchev and the Russians. Now, we've put it on the record that, in fact, it is the space program that's the origination of the heart of the assassination program. And what happened, I think, in the case of NASA with Kennedy is they saw, hey, he's going to give basically our most vital secret over to the Soviet Union. And that most vital secret was, in fact, the UFO file. Now, one of the people I spoke to in regard to this was the Watergate lawyer, Douglas Caddy. And Caddy, I can tell you, is a historical figure. This is not somebody who speaks lightly about anything. And he's a canny character who's been involved in all sorts of the history of the United States. But he was the lawyer for the Watergate 7. And it just so happened that his best friend, who he was a lawyer for, was E. Howard Hunt. And when Hunt was going to prison, they had one last dinner there at a Chinese restaurant, famous in Washington, D.C. And he pulled him aside and he said, well, I just want to know one thing. Says, I'm not going to see you, Howard. What is it that caused the Central Intelligence Agency to murder the 35th President of the United States? Why did they kill John Kennedy? And Hunt said, John Kennedy was killed because he was about to give our nation's most vital national security secret away to the Russians. And Caddy couldn't believe this. He said, why would Kennedy do anything like that? What secret are you talking about? And Hunt looked at him and said, the UFO file is the alien presence. And then he walked away off to prison. And in fact, Caddy never spoke to him again. But that incredible revelation dovetails with something I mentioned with Alex earlier, all about Harold Malmgren, who was a Kennedy National Security staffer. And he said, what was going on there was an incredible clash in the background. They wanted to hoard the technology. The people like LeMay, the ex-protect type groups on the CIA side, they didn't want anything to do with it. And they had as an ally in there this other group, which was the Project Paperclip NASA scientists. So that group was there, and they were feeding out this information. And the Nazi paperclip group that we had recruited into our national security program to go to the moon and develop missiles and everything else included many, many unsavory characters. That's just a fact of history now. And one of the really, I think, extraordinary things about all that is Kennedy's overture, which is recorded from a memo on November 12th, 1963, was to share. He directs the director of the Central Intelligence Agency to share that intelligence of the high threat UFO cases, because they were tracking so much of this and didn't have a handle on everything about what was behind the craft that were operating, in our skies, basically, without any kind of fear. And he gave that memo, and I think that nod was the last piece in the Kennedy case. They said, this guy, forget it. And in particular, on the paperclip side, they had just been in a war with the Russians, the Soviet Union, and they had just killed 30 million Russians. And the idea then that we're going to get into this situation with the hostile Russians and give them the UFO technology that our advanced German scientists have been working with in the background was ludicrous. And in that case, for them, it was treason. They were eliminating a national security threat, and that was President Kennedy. Kennedy's vision was, if we can share the technology, if we can go to the moon together, if we can have a joint moon mission, if we can do this and incorporate these other nations, we're not going to have the nuclear threat so in our face. space all the time. We're not going to annihilate each other, and we're not going to bring weapons into space. And so President Kennedy's dream, in that sense, was to bring us into an entirely different setup and situation. And that situation was, we're going to go and have a joint moon mission. Well, that's the end of the arms race. That's the end of the Vietnam War. That's the end of the Cold War. All of those incredible benefits are not going to be realized by the military-industrial complex. What's that going to do for Boeing or Lockheed? How are those guys going to make any money? Well, they couldn't see their way through on this, and the Ex-Protect group decided not only President Kennedy, we're going to limit his actions, we're going to get rid of him completely. And when they did that, and then they got the media to go along with it, somewhere in that national security structure, they didn't care because they just wanted their objectives. But the government trust was lost there so dramatically that even now, if they were to roll out, a full-fledged UFO on the White House lawn, it's going to take a lot of rebuilding of trust for us even to believe, in this case, what it would be. I think that President Trump's efforts in this are, in fact, genuine. And he's also very strategic with what he does. And I don't think that, in terms of presidents, you have anyone more informed on the UFO file except Kennedy. And Kennedy's information, of course, as I mentioned, came through Defense Secretary Forrestal. So there was a long line there of getting rid of these people, and Forrestal was the heavy hitter on the track of the UFO file. Now, what I can tell you is we can get to that place with this announcement, with the Trump announcement, of getting real UFO disclosure and also exposing the Ex-Protect group that has been thwarting history and really taking the public's money for its own purposes. That's the crucial aspect, I think, in understanding the governing structure of planet Earth, is to get to who's controlling the UFO file. And that's what we're doing here. And of course, Alex has been spotlighting this issue, really giving it some presence. And that's fantastic, as someone who has so much credibility as Alex does on these matters. And we'll be doing a show tonight on Trump's announcement and the whole piece. I have several other pieces to bring to bear on all this. Thank you so much. And of course, it's Dark Journalist at darkjournalist.com, Dark Journalist on YouTube, Dark Journalist on X. I'll be there. It's been great to be here with you. Join us in the Ideas Room tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to go deep. Thanks, everyone.
Today and tomorrow, the last days to get 100 times X entries into the amazing raffle. It only happens every few months, where both of the offerings of the Shelby Mustang and the awesome Ford off-road truck, 100X for every dollar you spend on the store, put in the raffle. You get put in for just the next 2 days, is all that's left, to get both vehicles. There's a time where there's a crossover for 1 week. That ends tomorrow. Every order in the site for a very limited time, it's probably just last throughout the weekend, I'm told, is this hat. And this is a classic design that I put out on InfoWars like 20 years ago. Notice everybody else copied it, which is cool. I just go, why don't we have that classic design back? So they brought it back, and it's a ring of, 13 stars around 1776. And it's simple, it's clean, and a leftist probably won't kill you or murder you for it. If you have like a MAGA or InfoWars hat, that's real adventure. This is just at the airport or wherever, hey, Patriots know. And it's just exciting. It spreads the word. So every order, on top of the sales that are already there, for a limited time, gets a free 1776 ball cap at thealexjonesstore.com. And if you're going to buy anything on the store, become a VIP for $30 a month. You cancel anytime for free. Instantly, you get $40 to spend each month. The minute you click that button for $30, you get $40 to spend. Special deals, special offers, special sales, everything. So anybody buying anything should be a VIP. And it's really no commitment. You just get better deals. Cancel anytime for free. One click in your profile. Everyone should be a VIP. Also, sometimes stuff runs out and sells out. Don't want to happen? Become a subscriber. Cancel anytime. They hold it back for you at the biggest discounts as well. Become a VIP. Become a subscriber. But regardless, share the live feeds of the show. Tell folks about those local AM and FM stations, cable stations, because that's how we reach the people, and that's how we change the world. The whole globalist house of cards is coming down. We've been vindicated. You've been vindicated. Nothing's going to stop that. Stay with us. Massive gas straight ahead.
leading a frontal assault on the lies of the New World Order. It's Alex Jones.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the War Room. I'm your host, Harrison Smith, coming to you live this Friday afternoon. Hope everybody's feeling all right, doing well. We got a heck of a lot of news to get to. Some very big things happening right now, including the long-awaited and extremely controversial interview between Tucker Carlson and Mike Huckabee. We'll be checking in on Tuck and Mike here in just a second. But just massive news across the board, including the tariffs and the fallout from that, and the lucky bets made by certain members of the Trump administration that are allowing them to make billions off of their own policies. Isn't that convenient? So a lot to talk about. I'm going to try to take your calls, but frankly, no promises. We're going to play it by ear, but we're going to be joined in the third hour by Tiffany Cianci. Our bubbly little fairy of doom will, I'm sure, grace us with all sorts of just horrifying headlines about how private equity is systematically destroying everything good in the world. So it's always fun and very informative when she's here. And I'll try to open up the phone lines in the second hour, but we got so much news and a lot of clips to get to. Let's begin today, as we do every day, with our Daily Dispatch. For Friday, the 20th of February, 2026. Caltech, what the heck? That's not my story. I don't know what these are. Here you go. Supreme Court rules most of Donald Trump's tariffs are illegal. The U.S. Supreme Court on Friday overturned most of President Donald Trump's tariffs, which could lead to more than $175 billion in tariff refunds for American companies. In a 6-3 decision, the justices ruled that the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, the law that the Trump administration used to justify his many sweeping global tariffs, does not grant the president the power of taxation, and tariffs are a form of tax on imports. We'll, again, get more into this a little bit later, but that's not good news. Some more not good economic news. U.S. economic growth weaker than thought in fourth quarter with government shutdown, consumer pullback. The nation's gross domestic product, the total output of goods and services, increased at a 1.4% annual rate in the fourth quarter. The Commerce Department reported Friday down from 4.4% in the July-September quarter and 3.8% in the quarter before that. The figures point to a more modest pace of growth in the coming quarters as consumers take on more debt and cut back on saving to maintain their spending. Now, yeah, we'll get back into that as well. We're going to probably go into the next segment and talk about just the general collapse of America in the number of ways it's manifesting economically is just one of them. Meanwhile, Trump vows to release classified documents on aliens after saying Obama's comments were, quote, classified. After accusing the former president of confirming aliens exist, President Donald Trump has announced that he will be releasing government records related to aliens and any unidentified flying objects. Which, okay, great, yeah, that's fine. Do that now. Do that now. See how that works. I mean, I feel like they're getting a little desperate. Trump says he'll decide whether to bomb Iran in the next 10 to 15 days. Great. We'll await that decision. We'll report more on that later, but of course it's not going to be the simple matter it was last June, especially with headlines like this. NORAD intercepts Russian planes near Alaska. The North American Aerospace Defense Command detected, tracked, and intercepted 2 Russian Tu-95 bomber planes, 2 Su-35 fighter planes, and 1 A-50 spy plane until they departed the Alaskan ADIZ. The defense agency launched 2 F-16s and 2 F-35s and 4 KC-135s to complete the mission. So we had to scramble to deal with Russian jets in our airspace over Alaska. Finally, hundreds of U.S. troops have been evacuated from El Udeid air base in Qatar. Hundreds of troops have been evacuated from the air base in Qatar. The New York Times reported this, citing sources in the Pentagon who noted that forces are also being evacuated from U.S. bases in Bahrain. A senior Pentagon official added that American forces would be a greater risk if the U.S. were to initiate the strike and not Israel. But I think no matter what, Iran is sending a very clear message that every American asset in the region is on the table as soon as hostilities break out. We'll be right back.
Thanks for all your support. Today and tomorrow are the last days to get 100 times X entries into the amazing raffle, where both of the offerings of the Shelby Mustang and the awesome Ford off-road truck, when you get 100X for every dollar you spend on the store, put into the raffle, you get put in for just the next 2 days, all that's left, to get both vehicles. That ends tomorrow. Every order in the site for a very limited time is this hat. And this is a classic design that I put out on InfoWars like 20 years ago. And it's a ring of 13 stars around 1776. It's simple, it's clean, and it's just exciting, and it spreads the word. So every order, on top of the sales that are already there, for a limited time, gets a free 1776 ball cap at thealexjonesstore.com.
You're watching The War Room with your host, Harrison Smith. Watch it live right now on X.com.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is The War Room. I'm your host, Harrison Smith. We got a big show for you today, and I think we'll start with a sort of follow-up to a story we covered yesterday. We, of course, were reacting to the full deposition of Les Wexner, and a very curious instance when his lawyer leaned over and said, "I will effing kill you if you answer like that again." A little weird, a little bizarre, a little odd. And it was kind of such a strange thing just to hear and try to be like, wait, is this a real threat? Is he just talking like that? Like, what an odd thing to say. We didn't even ask, like, what was that in a response? What was that in response to? Why did he say that at that point? Like, what did Les Wexner say that inspired his lawyer to say, if you answer like that again, I will kill you? And so we have an answer for this. Clip 30. Very interesting observation of what exactly he was saying when he was, jokingly or not, threatened with his life. Let's watch clip number 30 now.
I just found out why Les Wexner's lawyer said this. Because just before that, he was saying all of this. And I mean, get ready, because this is wild.
Vince, I mentioned that earlier.
For context, he's about to be talking about Jeffrey right here.
He represented their whole families. There have been a whole bunch of people that, most of them I never would have met, but I knew LA. But there were people that called me that either insinuated or said they knew Jeffrey through a financial relationship. And so they could have been actors, but at the time, the guy calls me up. I'll give you an example.
His attorney tries to stop him right here.
Because I want you to understand, it's so confusing to me. He would say, like, I'm providing financial advice to the founders of Google. I'm providing financial advice to Jeff Bezos. I'm providing financial advice of the chief technologist at Google. I'm in good company because these are really smart guys with a lot of money.
This is the best case scenario, really. They're all going after each other now. They're going after each other because they're throwing each other under the bus. And then they have nothing to lose. So they just say everything because they know it doesn't matter if they don't say anything. He knows it doesn't matter if his attorney does what he says he's going to do. I mean, this guy's old anyway. This guy just name-dropped Jeffrey Epstein with the likes of Google, Jeff Bezos, and the Rothschilds. Yeah, I'd say he's probably in a situation where he knows that he has nothing to lose. And the thing with monsters is that they eat each other. Like and follow for more videos like this one.
Yeah, Yeah, very, very interesting. Name dropping the Rothschilds, Jeff Bezos, and the head of Google right before his lawyer tells him, answer like that again and I'll effing kill you. Very, very interesting. Very interesting in my opinion. And again, we're not going to spend the whole show on Jeffrey Epstein. I'm kind of sick of it at this point. It's been 2 weeks since the files were released. It's been 2 weeks, right? That sounded wrong when I said it. I feel like it's been 10 years. But let's go to clip 15 here, because this is Mike Benz breaking down how, well, really, the Trump administration, again, should have just owned this from the beginning. They should have been the ones releasing the Epstein files on purpose. But almost in like a serendipitous, I don't know, miraculous kind of way, by forcing Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie to write a bill over this, it really made it a lot worse for the people that were trying to keep it quiet. Let's go to clip number 15 now.
I do think that there was a miscalculation about this, and the staying power of the Epstein story is going to eventually force more concessions as it already has through this bill. I think about this. Nobody wanted to be the Thomas Massie who has their whole career thrown up in the air, getting primaried in hit pieces and, disavowed, and then Marjorie Taylor Greene feeling like she had to drop out of Congress altogether over this. Nobody wanted to be the one to sponsor the bill, but nobody wanted to be the one to go against it once it was already sponsored. So you had the situation where everybody feared the higher power centers of the party to not sponsor that bill. But once the bill was sponsored and live to be voted on, everybody feared the base that if they voted against it, they'd be voted out and it'd be held over their heads forever. And so the mere act of sponsoring the bill put the establishment in a bind. They would normally, obey donors or obey, top-down directives. But once the bill was live and they had to answer forever how they voted on that bill, they were put to a point, 427-1 it passed in the House and 99-0 in the Senate. So nobody was willing to bring it, but then once it was brought, nobody was willing to oppose it. The same thing can be done with all of this. I think that this is one of these moments where if you can use that same strategy, you could do that in theory, not just for the CIA and State Department files on Epstein. Who's going to vote against CIA declassification of around COVID-19? All records, responsive to bioweapons research, CIA, ODNI, DIA, NSA, all of that. Do it with Fast and Furious. Do it with Seth Rich laptop. I'm inspired by what Thomas Massie has done, and given that they've already put easy from the crowd to say this. I know this. I'm sure that when Thomas Massie walks back to his car at night or something, he wonders, okay, like, did I say too much today? But the fact is he's just opened the door to a very revealing phenomenon, which is that our elected representatives, at the end of the day, feared the base more than they feared the top of the pyramid on this.
Yeah, so that is very interesting. And again, another victory for the info war and the true, populist movement around the world. And really, they've been hoisted by their own petard. Their constant double dealing and backstabbing and doublespeak is finally caught up to them. And they're kind of between a rock and a hard place and can't figure out a way to get out. It was too convenient to use the Epstein files as a political short-term football. And now they don't know what the hell to do on either side. And I think their solution to this turns out to be starting World War III. So we'll get to that in just a second. There's so many different ways to go. I think what I'll do is go to clip 10 here, and let me know when we can go to these videos. This is also Mike Benz, and from the same interview from Tucker Carlson, and he's talking about what has led us to this point, and the open conspiracy, the criminal cabal centered around Obama that is basically solely responsible for the last 10 years of division and political chaos in this country. And some pretty astonishing news has come out about this recently, despite the fact that the events are 10 years old. The news is breaking. Let's go to clip number 10 here. This is Mike Benz talking about sort of what has led us to where we are now. Let's watch.
The exact group behind the Transition Integrity Project, which explicitly plotted in the height of the George Floyd riots, ran a war game about how the Biden campaign, in case Trump won in a clear win scenario, clear Trump win was the name of their scenario, scenario 3. This is in June 2020. How the Biden campaign could get racial justice activists from these riots to be, quote, receptive to a Biden call to take to the streets, and plotted what needed to be done to resource them and to cultivate relationships with Black Lives Matter's senior leadership and community leaders so that they would owe the Biden administration favors in case they need to be called on. And lo and behold, who pays them $50 billion? The Chamber of Commerce then flooded them with $50 billion in contributions. You remember that? All the different Chamber of Commerce companies just flooded billions of dollars of donations to BLM.
To destroy our country.
So again, it's really hard to overstate the damage that was done to us by the Biden administration. I don't think you can overstate it. And I'm just like thinking of all, by opening the border, the Afghanistan withdrawal, again, like tons of refugees from that debacle. But all of that came 4 years after the Russiagate collusion hoax. I mean, Black Lives Matter, the racial crap we've had to go through, the rise in murder rates that occurred after defund the police, the discrimination that an entire generation of white males has faced as a consequence of the Black Lives Matter agenda, which is just means that, I mean, we will literally never know the true level of damage that's been done to us because we have nothing to compare it to. We can't observe the other timeline where all of this crap didn't happen, where a generation of young white guys wasn't deliberately kept out of the corporate world, where we didn't open up the border to 20 to 30 million illegal immigrants in 4 years. We can only imagine what condition we would be in if all of this stuff hadn't happened. But it all goes back to Obama, CIA, Russiagate, and everything flows downstream from that. And of course, all of that was in service of the war with Russia that had been planned for decades, and that they had to pull pretty, amazing things off in order to stop Trump from getting in the way of their plans. The story is from @RealRobert on X. Here it is. Documents obtained through the Freedom of Information Act confirm Barack Obama's deadline, November 8, 2016, for the overthrow of the U.S. government. A high-ranking State Department official memo unearthed through open records litigation by the conservative group Citizens United. If there was ever an admission that obliterates Barack Obama's secret warrant to surveil Donald Trump's campaign, it sat buried for years in the files of a high-ranking State Department official. Deputy Assistant Director of State Kathleen Kavalek's written account of her October 11, 2016 meeting with FBI informant Christopher Steele shows that the Hillary Clinton campaign funded British intelligence operative, admitted that his research was political and facing an election day deadline. That confession occurred just 10 days before the FBI used Steele's now piece of garbage dossier to justify securing a Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act FISA warrant to surveil former President Trump's campaign advisor Carter Page and for the campaign's ties to Russia. Steele's client, Hillary Clinton, quote, is keen to see this information come to light prior to November 8th, the date of the 2016 election. Kavalek wrote in a typed summary of her meeting with Steele and Tatiana Duran, a colleague from Steele's Orbis security firm, Christopher Wray, FBI, released unredacted portions of Kavalek's memo show she emailed 2 days after meeting Steele. You may already have this information, but wanted to pass it on just in case. Recipients' names, subject line, and attachments were redacted under the National Security Act. The visible sentences indicate officials suspected Steele's motives were political, noting, quote, Orbis undertook the investigation into the Russia-Trump connection at the behest of an institution he declined to identify and that had been hacked. Now it's the DNC. In other words, the FBI, under Director Christopher Wray, classified the document as secret and, even worse, added this hopeful note, declassify on 12/31/2041. That would be 25 freaking years after the 2016 election. These notes provide written proof that the Obama administration knew of Barack Obama's treasonous motive on Election Day and Election Day deadline before FBI obtained a FISA warrant. Okay, do we understand? Do we understand what it's saying? That on October 11th, 2016, there were meetings from an FBI, there are notes from an FBI meeting with Chris Steele, Tatiana Duran of Orbis Security, where they noted that the Christopher Steele dossier, the Russia that kicked off and was the predicate for the Russiagate collusion hoax, all of the spying that went on, was known to have been created with a political motivation, not out of genuine concern for the national security of America, but rather as a political ploy by the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton. And that despite knowing that, and you understand, like, if they know that this information was gathered as part of a political hit job, then it's not valid or, extremely questionable when it comes to using it to get warrants or anything of the sort, right? Because that's not a predicate that you want to start. You don't want to start using DOJ to go after your political opponents by just going to their political opponents and say, give us whatever dirt you've made up about this person, and then we'll use that to spy on the people, with the assumption that they would find something. Remember, all of this was done with the assumption that Hillary Clinton would be elected and they would be able to cover up all of their malfeasance, and they'd be able to use the warrants to spy on the Trump campaign, to get dirt to keep him out of office, or to screw him up once he was in office. Now, there wasn't actually any dirt to find, so that sort of messed up their whole operation, and then Donald Trump won, and that really put him into a tailspin. But now, nearly a decade later, we have undeniable proof, first-hand accounts from prior to the 2016 election, where it was acknowledged by everybody involved that they knew the source of the Christopher Steele dossier and used it illegally to obtain FISA warrants. Background: Orbis undertook the investigation into Russia/Trump connection at the behest of an institution he declined to identify and has been hacked. It's either the DNC or Hillary Clinton, but tomato, tomato, right? The institution approached them based on the recommendation of Glenn Simpson and Peter Fritsch, specialists in economic crime, formerly of the Wall Street Journal, and is keen to see this information come to light prior to November 8th. Orbis undertook this investigation in June of 2016. So right after Donald Trump got the candidacy for the Republicans, they launched the fake investigation, fraudulent dossier, in order to spy on the Trump campaign. Again, I wish Democrats and our fellow Americans were capable of taking this in and understanding it and what it really means, because we keep hearing them expound and pontificate on their deep love of the American system and the horror that grips their heart if they even imagine somebody like Trump using the incredible powers of the United States presidency to benefit himself or his own political party. They keep telling us over and over again how they oppose that sort of thing on principle, and how, frankly, when that is the threat, anything is justified in trying to stop it. It's the death of democracy, after all, to imagine a president of the United States using the Department of Justice for naked political gain. It's unconscionable. It's unimaginable. Okay, so that happened. It just happened under Obama. Do you still care about it? Or do you not care about anything and you're just pretending to have principles or beliefs at all because it's immediately convenient in going after Trump? I genuinely want to know. Because if what they've been shouting from the rooftops for the last 10 years has even an inkling of truth to it, sincerity to it, then they would be outraged at this and calling for blood. But they're not, because they're liars. And we are the only ones still to this day that actually genuinely care about the corruption in our country and the just flagrant misuse of presidential powers by the Democrats. Which is very sad, which is a very sad thing when this affects all of us, and we should all be able to unify in opposition to the actuality of the imagined threat of the Democrats. Democrats are always imagining and fantasizing about a world that doesn't exist, in which Trump does things that Obama did for a decade. Can we please just care about the actual thing, for the love of God? But no, that's not actually going to happen. Now I want to go to clip number. Well, let's go to clip number 15 here, just to close this out. And on the other side, I'm going to talk about just the generalized collapse that we're involved in. But for now, let's just remind ourselves who we're dealing with, what we're dealing with, and the psychological paradigm at work in the minds of humanity's enemies. Let's watch clip 15 here.
Leftism requires dehumanization. That is, the dehumanization of large groups of others. For instance, in order to validate abortion, you have to use dehumanizing language and essentially dehumanize the baby in the womb. In order to not have to contend with any right-wing policies or ideas, you can just lump them all into a category and call them Nazis and fascists, dehumanize them, which then makes instances like Charlie Kirk and the killing of anyone to the right of them okay. That's also why they feel so comfortable, DMing people with awful violent threats or name calling, because they've just kind of marked you in the box in their mind as someone that's not human. This obviously stems from a lack of foundation from God, no foundation for inherent human worth. People really exist just to push their agenda or validate themselves and their lifestyle. And that's why there's such little shame around such awful messages. Like when I was receiving awful messages for 3 days straight, just heinous death threats, awful comments, and I, would maybe call them out on it, it would be like, there's no shame, there's no standard they hold themselves to, because again, if you are going against their agenda, if you are threatening their lifestyle, if you are threatening them being in power, nothing's off limits to them. You would think that if they were the party that truly cared about others, that wanted peace, that was loving and tolerant, then this is not how they would present themselves. That they would present themselves as somebody who could have a conversation, as somebody that, saw other people as human. Because then perhaps other people would take them seriously when they have, ideas on social issues. But really, no one can take you guys seriously as far as policy or anything when this is how you act.
Yeah. It's all together. And you would think that there's it would be nuanced. There would be good things about the left and bad things about the left, good things about the right and bad things about the right. But the left is just incompetent, but they're also vicious. They're also dehumanizing. They're also actually the racist ones. And when they get in power, everything gets worse every single time, sometimes in astronomical or catastrophic ways. There's no redeeming quality from the left. The only redeeming thing you could possibly point to is the words they say, because they sound nice, but those are just lies. So really, you're just pointing to another bad thing, the way they lie.
To get to a point where we are self-sufficient again, Texas. And when it comes to health, also food, our food needs to be clean, number one. It just needs to be clean. And
Florida has pointed out, put that back on screen, all these major brands have got hundreds of times the glyphosate you should have.
Glyphosate.
Absolutely. Well, your doctor tells us what that does.
Oh, this is gonna change your brain. This is going to set you up.
It erases your blood-brain barrier.
Oh yeah.
So it's really an accelerant or an adjuvant to everything in there. Explain that.
It destroys the blood-brain barrier. So that's a protective thing that happens between the cerebral spinal fluid and your fluids inside the brain and the things that attack it from the outside. Once that barrier is depleted, then it's subject to all kinds of heavy metals, things that get sprayed from the sky, right? Barium, aluminum, all these things that it protects you from. Why methylene blue works. It does. It counters that. It's.
Let me ask you that. 45 minutes in, you feel it, Doc?
Yeah, I feel pretty good.
Be honest though. You got your own special brand. Is this good or what?
No, this is the same effect I'm getting, but it feels right. Yeah, it feels right. Yeah, it's a little easier to take. Yeah.
By easier, what do you mean compared
just in the the way it feels, just going down, drinking it.
So this one tastes better, but it's as good as the one your doctor did.
Yeah.
Wow, so your doctor must have a good one.
We'll see. We'll go down the road a little ways. I'll text you.
Guys, get him a couple bottles of this. I need Doc Chambers endorsing this.
I'm not getting it for free, but I'll definitely help.
No, you're getting it down. Come on. Free your blood. It's amazing.
Hey, this is Doc Chambers here. I'm out in the field right now. Day off from the campaign trail, doing some work. I got things to catch up on, so it's called a refit day. So I'm getting refit with Alex Jones's methylene blue. It's pretty good, I gotta say. I've been using it on the road since we left the studios, and I've been taking it for a while. I had a traumatic brain injury in Iraq in 2004. Been a lot of studies out there that show that with post-dementia patients and TBI patients, it's been used for years. It's just not very well known with regard to demyelination, what it can do to improve your cognition. So that's your brain housing these stuff. Hey, thanks, Alex. Appreciate you. We're going to stay on.
This methylene blue, it is tremendous. I would not be making this video if I didn't believe in it. After I take it throughout the day, I start feeling better and better and better. My workouts, I feel like I'm 15 years younger than I am, and the app that I record my running on proves that my workouts are getting better. So I gotta tell you what, God, family, country, InfoWars, and methylene blue. Get it while you can.
Powered by methylene blue, ultra methylene blue at thealexshowstore.com. Thanks for all your support. Today and tomorrow are the last days to get 100 times X entries into the amazing raffle where both of the offerings of the Shelby Mustang and the awesome Ford off-road truck, when you get 100X for every dollar you spend on the store, put into the raffle, you get put in for just the next 2 days, all that's left, to get both vehicles. That ends tomorrow. Every order in the site for a very limited time is this hat. And this is a classic design that I put out on InfoWars like years ago. And it's a ring of 13 stars around 1776. It's simple, it's clean, and it's just exciting, and it spreads the word. So every order, on top of the sales that are already there, for a limited time, gets a free 1776 ball cap at thealexshowstore.com.
Receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the War Room, Infowars.com, band.video. I was saying in the last segment, I have these multiple topics I want to get into, and they all relate, but it's almost like I'm trying to find the thread through them, how to present them to you, because there's multiple options. It's like each node connects to every other node in multiple ways. And so what we just heard was about how it is now as if we needed more evidence, as if it wasn't obvious for the last 9 years already that the entire Russiagate collusion hoax was just that, and it was centered around Obama, and it was known to be false from the beginning, and that everything they did was predicated on blatant, abject lies that they themselves didn't believe. Like, we knew all of that But the document we just showed you from October 11th, 2016 lays it out in black and white, excruciating detail, names, dates, times, what they were thinking. So we can sort of start there and look at just the immense damage that's been done to our country from the Rushgate collusion, which leads into the impeachment hoax, which leads into the fraud of the 2020 election, which of course is associated with COVID and Black Lives Matter and these riotous conditions, which leads to January 6th and the aggression and tyranny against Trump supporters throughout Biden's administration, which of course contained the opening of the floodgates, just to completely wreck our country in an irrevocable way. It's a chain of events. It's a series of dominoes falling. One leads directly to the next. And where it's left us is on the cusp of total collapse. While at the same time, sort of putting this all into context and understanding this fully requires that we also acknowledge our immense power, that America is at this moment threatening to go to war with Iran using an unimaginable amount of resources and money and people and equipment. And so you have to understand these things aren't unrelated. They're actually related in a lot of ways. Same reason that we're going to war with Iran was motivating a lot of the same people that were trying to, stop Trump from getting into office and making peace with Russia, right? The plan for World War III, Russia and Europe battling it out with each other over Ukraine while America fights Iran for the sake of Israel. Like, these plans have been long in place, and everything we've talked about up to this point is all in service of these things. But again, it's not enough to understand that America's not doing well. First, we have to understand that we could be. First, you have to understand how materially prosperous we truly are and how militarily powerful we truly are, because only then does our collapse come into focus. It would be easy to think that our collapse is inevitable or accidental, consequence of bad decisions that means everybody's suffering, but that's not the case. The collapse of America for the American people is on purpose. The collapse of the middle class, the collapse of our quality of life, the collapse of the ability of our social services, that's all deliberate, because simultaneous to that, our foreign adventures are funded to the ends of the earth. There's no problem with that. There's no interruption of service there. So it's not a matter of a natural, inevitable disaster that we have to try to cure or solve or mitigate in some way. These are choices being made, and you should really feel insulted and robbed when you know how much of your tax money is being stolen from you and you're not getting crap for it. And we're about to go to war with Iran, and they're not even pretending that you're going to benefit for it. We're going to get into all that. So again, I have so much about Iran. I have so much about Israel. I have the Tucker Carlson, Mike Huckabee thing. I've got Trump giving statements. Some of the statements he makes are about the Middle East, but it's also about the tariffs. So I'm trying to but it's all related. But these are all deeply, deeply intertwined. And I'm trying to get that across here. Let's go to clip 48 here, just to lay the groundwork once again to understand truly how powerful, prosperous, and incredible the United States is. And then we'll compare that to, the quality of life of our average citizen. But first, just a reminder of who we are. Let's watch.
We have the #1 military in the world, but I don't think people really understand what that means. We have the #1 Air Force in the world. Do you know what the #2 Air Force in the world is?
China.
The United States Navy. #3, China or Russia, if you believe their numbers. #4/5, Space Force. 3 of the top 5 air forces in the entire world are us. The #1 Navy, us. #4 Navy in the world, us, our Coast Guard. And this doesn't have anything to say the 150 million Americans that are hunters. We're so much more powerful than anybody else. We're so so much more powerful. We've been robbed, hollowed out by trillions of dollars, and still nobody notices. Right. Any other nation in the history of the world would have collapsed multiple times over. But our enemies, and this is just what I think, our enemies figured out that they can't beat us in traditional military knowledge. There's something called fifth generation warfare. It's psychological warfare. It's about depression and demoralization. Turn your children against their parents, turn the women against the men, turn the races against each other, and then allow moral decay to happen, where all of us should be together and just marveling at this incredible society that we've built. And go on TV, go online. It's Civil War, blacks and whites, men and women, gays and straights. Then come out here into the real world. Right. Is any of that? Do you see any of it? Have you been in a restaurant? It's nonstop diversity. Everybody's chill. Everybody's cool. It's none of that. There's a huge schism between what they're telling us and how life really is. That's warfare.
So, in one regard, he's exactly right. Like, I pretty much don't disagree with him about anything that he's saying. However, the very end there, I think he's a little bit off. I mean, to a certain degree, he's right? You can go online and it looks like flame wars and dumpster fires. And then you go outside and it's all crickets and sunshine. So, I get what he's saying. But at the same time, the outrage and the anger and the fury and the chaos and the just unsettledness that people are feeling is very real. And it's not some small thing. Yeah, Gerard Michaels, that's who this was. Why no country can defeat the U.S. in a real war. Again, he's exactly right. And he's definitely right about the fact that America can't be beat unless we beat ourselves. Unless we defeat ourselves, we cannot be defeated. However, we're defeating ourselves. We are being defeated internally. And the average American needs to wake up to this and not take it. And understand, first and foremost, and this is in contradiction to the demoralization campaign that tells you, oh, everything's terrible, it's only getting worse, and there are forces beyond your control. The reality is the exact opposite. The reality is that these bad conditions aren't something that just happen and that nobody can stop and that people in power are trying to, fight back against, but gosh, just, impossible. No, these are choices made. These are deliberate attacks against you. The quality of life for you going down is the desired outcome of the people putting the policies into place. You need to understand that. And I've said this same refrain for years on end, talking about how things don't just happen. It's sort of the first step of being a conspiracy theorist, is when you look around and you realize nobody in my neighborhood looks like me or even speaks my language. When you look around and think, everything is just getting worse and my hometown is unrecognizable, what they want you thinking is, and I better get used to that. What they want you thinking is, and, I better leave, or I better just, try to get my own because, everybody else is doing that. What they don't want you doing is understanding this is an organized attack against you, and that by organizing a counterattack, you can get back to the way things were. One of the most pernicious concepts, sort of just adopted unconsciously, subconsciously by the American people, is this idea that there's a direction that history is going. And it's, put out by the so-called progressives, right? That's what the word means, is that you're progressing in a certain direction. And they sort of act like they really believe that. Like any sort of liberalizing, democratizing policy they can put forward is permanent and it will always remain, and it'll only get, bigger and worse from here. Better, I guess, from their perspective. That's not true at all. There's absolutely no law of nature that says we have to go that way. In fact, the more we progress down the progressive timeline, the worse everything gets. So it's just a matter of recognizing, acknowledging what is pushing us down this road, and then consciously opposing these forces. It's not hard. It's just, you have to do it. You have to have the will. We just don't have the will. So let's look at how America is going, shall we? Let's go to clip number 17 here, because this represents the absolute and total breakdown of the fundamental fabric of our society. It represents an end to the social contract as we know it. And again, we are progressing through time in a way where this type of stuff is becoming more and more common, and it will become the norm if we continue to progress this way. Like, we are on a trajectory right now, but that trajectory is not inevitable. We can change direction at any point by choosing to do so, but we have to choose to do so. And so things are getting worse. This is going to be more and more common, what you're about to hear. And what we have to decide is not to change ourselves and our lives and our point of view to comport with the new horrifying and untenable reality. Rather, we have to seize control of the levers of power and set things right, regardless of who cries about us doing so. So we're going to listen to this recording. It is a 911 dispatch call from a young woman who has been assaulted by an ex-boyfriend, and the ex-boyfriend is trying to break into the house, and the 911 dispatcher says, nothing we can do. Let's watch.
911 emergency. My ex-boyfriend is trying to break into my house. I'm not letting him in, but he's tried to break down the door, and he's trying to break into one of the windows. He put me in the hospital a few weeks ago, and I've been trying to keep him away. I told him I was going to call. He's now trying to break in through the window. He's trying to jimmy it open.
Okay. Do you have anybody else in the house with you?
No, I don't.
Okay. Does he live there?
No, he does not.
Are you still there?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have anybody to send out there.
Okay.
Obviously, if he comes inside the residence and assaults you, can you ask him to go away, or do you know if he's intoxicated or anything?
I've already asked him. I've already told him I was calling you. He's spoken before, busted down my door, assaulted me. Yeah, so...
Is there any way you can safely leave the residence?
No, I can't. Because he's blocking pretty much my only way out.
With a vehicle?